So what if I told you there was a single training philosophy, a secret system behind 5 different NFL teams and a combined 8 trips to the Super Bowl? A system that was born in the Soviet Union, refined behind the scenes, and was responsible for building some of the most dominant American champions we've ever seen. Well, this is the story of the system.
You know, in the world of pro sports, what really separates a good team from a true dynasty? Is it just talent? A bit of luck? Or is there something more, something systematic going on? It turns out, for a very select group of legendary coaches, the secret was a blueprint they kept under wraps for decades. 8. Just look at that number. That's how many times coaches using this exact system took their teams to the Super Bowl. That is not a fluke, that's a pattern. And it was the result of a totally different, scientific way of thinking about how you build an athlete. So what on earth was their secret?
Well, the story really kicks off when these 2 legendary American strength coaches, Al Miller and Johnny Parker, they thought they were at the absolute top of their game. So they take their programs to a defected Soviet master coach, Grigory Goldstein. And the feedback they got? It was just brutal. That quote says it all. The pages were bleeding. Goldstein's critique basically showed them that they had it all wrong. They were just picking exercises they liked. They didn't understand the deep principles behind it all.
And this right here, this gets to the very heart of the whole philosophy. Most training, back then and even today, it's basically just bodybuilding. It's about isolating muscles, chasing that pump. The Soviet system, completely different. It wasn't about looking strong in the mirror, it was about being athletic on the field. It was all about a planned, principled progression using whole-body movements.
And that logical progression, it's best visualized as a pyramid. This is the core philosophy, really hammered home by Hall of Fame coach Al Vermeil. It's not just a grab bag of cool workouts. It's a strict hierarchy. You simply cannot build the peak of the pyramid without first building a massive solid base.
Now, this is what's so eye-opening. Vermeil said that even the pros, these world-class athletes, they'd show up with these huge weaknesses in their foundation. I mean, sure, they were getting by on raw talent, but their physical base was actually kind of shaky. So the system, it forces them, no matter who they are, to go right back to the bottom and build that foundation properly.
So here it is. This is the hierarchy. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with work capacity. That's just your body's ability to handle tough training and recover from it. Only after you have that can you build real strength. Then that strength becomes the foundation for power, which is just strength applied really, really fast. And all of that entire structure, is what holds up the very peak, speed. And here's the rule. You cannot skip a level. Period.
Okay, so if the pyramid is the blueprint, what's the engine? What makes it all go? Well, the Soviets figured out that they could pretty much control an athlete's development with scientific precision just by mastering 2 and only 2 critical variables.
The first one, and honestly the most important one, is volume. All this means is the total amount of work you do. Think of it like the total number of reps you lift in a session or a week. The Soviets found that managing this one variable, volume, was the single most important factor for making slow, steady progress over the long haul, and this is huge, for avoiding burnout and injury.
And this volume isn't just random. It's allocated with surgical precision. For a newer athlete, for instance, look at this. The program gives the lion's share of the total volume to the big foundational lifts, like the squat. The priority couldn't be clearer. Build that strong base first, period.
All right, the second variable is intensity. This is basically just how heavy you're lifting, and it's expressed as a percentage of your 1-rep max. And folks, this is where the Soviets made a discovery that just completely flies in the face of that old go heavy or go home gym culture.
They went through thousands and thousands of training logs, and they found this sweet spot. They saw that training between 70 and 85% of your max was by far the most efficient way to build both strength and power without the insane fatigue on your nervous system that comes from constantly trying to max out.
Okay, so we've got volume and we've got intensity. But how do you actually organize them over time? It's not a straight line. Nope. Instead, the system uses this really cool signature wave pattern to manage all that stress and recovery.
The fancy term is undulating periodization, but all it really means is that instead of just adding more and more weight every single week, your total training volume waves up and down. This planned change-up is the secret to forcing your body to adapt while also strategically giving it time to recover.
So here's what a typical 4-week wave looks like. You build up for 3 weeks, right? You're progressively adding more stress. Then, just when you're about to hit a wall, you get to week 4. And that's the unload week. The volume drops way down, and that's when the magic happens. Your body recovers, it adapts, and you come back way stronger for the next cycle.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But how does this all fit together in a single week? I mean, how do you actually manage volume and intensity for different lifts without totally frying the athlete?
Now, this is a simplified look for sure, but it really shows you the genius of the weekly plan. Notice how you never hammer the same thing twice. So on day 1, you might squat for volume. That means more reps, but at a lower intensity. Then later in the week, on day 3, you squat for intensity, fewer reps, but much heavier. This constant waving up and down lets you train important movements often without burning out. It's brilliant.
So when you boil it all down, what are the core principles? First, you've got to focus on explosive whole-body movements. Second, and maybe the biggest one, you have to accept that volume is king. It's the most critical variable. Third, keep your intensity in that super efficient sweet spot. And finally, you develop all the athletic qualities, strength, power, speed, at the same time, just in different amounts depending on where you are in the cycle.
But here's the final piece of the puzzle, and it's absolutely crucial. The system isn't some rigid, cookie-cutter program that you can just print out and follow without thinking. It's a framework, and it requires real wisdom to use.
You know, when the American coaches kept bugging the Soviets for exact numbers, like what exact percentage should I use or how many reps exactly, they kept getting this one really frustrating answer. That depends on the eye of the coach. The plan, the numbers, that's the science. But a great coach has to have the art of knowing when to push, when to pull back, based on what they see in their athlete right there on that day.
And that brings us to the final question that the system really forces us to ask ourselves. In today's world of high-intensity everything, it is so easy to confuse being exhausted with making progress. But a hard workout isn't always a good workout. The real question is, does your training have a plan? Is it systematically building a better athlete from the ground up? Or is it just getting them tired?